Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to talk about Rachel Livedalen's current exhibition, Read Somewhere. I'm going to pan around. There's really a lot to talk about with the show. I think that on the surface, this work is incredibly fun and poppy, colorful, but it's complex and there's a lot to dig into, and I'm excited to talk to Rachel about that. Just going to invite her in. Before we get our conversation started. Hey, Rachel.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Pretty good. Got my coffee, all ready to go.
In the studio?
Yeah, in the studio. The very empty studio because all the work is in the gallery right now.
I know, we've got a ton of work here. Is it 35 pieces total?
It might even be like 38.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the bulk of it are these pieces behind me, these works on paper, but they're all, very complex printmaking techniques and detailed. And so let's begin by first of all, this is your second solo show here.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of you who did not watch the first one, Rachel, would you mind just introducing yourself and introducing maybe some of the like overall themes and interests that you have?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Rachel Livedalen. I am based in Fort Worth. I am a printmaker and painter. And the works in the show are predominantly paintings that use printmaking techniques. And, hold on.
Oh.
My phone stand of a paint can is not quite working. And then, of course, there's a wall of framed works on paper that all use printmaking and drawing and painting. So all but two of them are completely unique works.
Okay. Which two are those?
The photographic ones.
Right. This one.
Yeah. So the two photographic ones only use printmaking, but everything else is either like printmaking, but used in a mono printing way, meaning there's only one print that occurs from the process. And then other works use printmaking, but then have drawing or painting added on top.
Nice. So the title of the exhibition is Read Somewhere.
Yes.
What prompted that title?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of the works reference art history books, specifically Greco-Roman art history books. Sometimes the reference is there in actual text on the surface. Other times the reference is there really subtly, like text blocks, like those images that are based from like book page designs, where image and text are sharing the page, but they're ordered, structured on the page. So anyways, all these references to books, to think of reading, and I like the term "read somewhere" because I think we all say really casually, trying to recall information. I read somewhere that blah 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 blah.
Right.
So there's this sense of knowledge, but not really knowing the source of the knowledge, and the idea of saying, "I read this somewhere," or "I heard this somewhere," weight to what you're speaking about, even though it might not actually be true, because you can't fully recall what it is, what the information was. So I like to play the titles that are playful, but can go a little well.
Nice. Would you mind trying to just shift around? I'm wondering if your microphone, I don't know, it seems to be picking up certain words.
Oh,
okay. We'll see if it works, and if not, it's not, it's not like we can't hear you. But yeah, so these compositions in particular, the ones where we're seeing a lot of rectangular forms, are pulled am I right to say pull like the compositions are pulled directly out of art history textbooks, the pages?
Yes. Yeah. So the geometric shapes would be images and um, like the figure information. So like that big pink rectangle would be an illustration from a book. Like it's a Greco-Roman sculpture, what I'm stealing it from. And then that tiny rectangle below it would be, you know, figure 13, blah, 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 from this museum, you know, this year. So I don't know. I started to really like how things were organized on the page. And uh, it's this interesting marriage of art and history, but also graphic design and uh, organizing things for someone to easily understand, structuring information, structuring history, which I find so fascinating.
Yeah. And I think it's just really important to mention just your background being half studio art,
Mm-hmm.
BSA, and half art history. And a lot of your work deals so directly with your like very deep interest in art history. Uh,
Uh-huh.
that's where all these different things come in. And why do you focus on the sort of Greco-Roman era?
Yeah, that's also a great question. To be honest, I'm not a Greco-Roman specialist. I don't know that much about like all of these particular objects. I am drawn to Greco-Roman art history and this sense of like an origin of Western art history, this
Mm.
classical form that throughout Western art history we kind of keep going back to. We see that throughout, you know, a long period of time. Um, so these representations of people, especially I'm interested in representations of gender, representations of women, really set a standard for representation, for ideas of beauty, even to how we understand ideas of beauty and aesthetics today. So I'm really drawn to it as like the start, the starting point for some of these ideas.
Yeah, and that's in really like very sharp contrast to some of these more expressive marks, colorful areas. And why do you include those? What are these blocks?
Yeah, so the blocks are a little bit playful, and as you said, they are gestural because sometimes the photos are screen printed. So sometimes, you know, they can feel a little stark. So often when I'm working, I'll want to contrast that with something playful, something with my hand, something quicker. And those colorful blocks, they're they're the same block design that that page is organized with, but they're distorted. They kind of curve. They're not perfect, and they fragment the overall page. So they act as blocks or blockades for our ability to read and see the original text.
Yeah, and a lot of these blank areas that you use these book pages, um, I read as like the what's missing in the
Mm.
communication in these art history textbooks, all the information in between the lines. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, or that things are a lot more complicated than seeing information on a page makes it seem. So, you know, we have these blocks and these sometimes like this one references text, but other times in the blocks there's references from other cultural artifacts. So like the two that you were just showing previously, there are design elements that I stole from Sonny and Cher
Mm.
albums because I'm kind of obsessed with Cher. But there's this idea of like cultural knowledge, um, that just makes the study of art history way more complicated.
Yeah.
especially looking at works from the Greco-Roman era in, 2023.
Hmm. And for those who know your work, they'll know that you're heavily inspired by Lisa Frank and sort of 90s girl culture.
Uh-huh.
But how does that sort of timeline and representation of a woman, come into play, and how does it interact with these Greco-Roman women?
Yeah, well, there's a stark juxtaposition between those eras. Yeah, so those are the daisy chains. You can see daisy chains in quite a few of the paintings in the show. Um, there's like this interesting shift that happens just by screen printing text from an art history book and then drawing a daisy chain on top. There's this harsh juxtaposition, but to me, like, it just kind of works. Like, they fit together well, so things just start to blend together. So I'm looking at works from art history as someone who is in the art academic world. So I'm a professor and I studied art history. So there's this like sense of scholarly value or academic value when it comes to those references. But then those other references like daisy chains, stickers, album artwork, playful ephemera that I love, like I'm so attracted to, those just aren't quite as valued in the same way. And it's that juxtaposition I'm really interested in.
Yeah, and this one, in contrast to the work that has a lot of these rectangular blocks, is really focused on that, lower brow for
Yes.
just referencing.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Those are all stickers. Yeah, so that one, To Hold Infinity, is the title, and it's all stickers that, and in fact, maybe I'll chat a little bit about the process because a lot of people think that they're just stickers on the surface of the painting, but it's all paint. Um, so I make different stencils to get like a hard edge with the sticker shapes. So I'll scan in like actual stickers that I have, and I'll break it down into shapes. That's very much the printmaker in me, working with stencils and color separation. And then I'll paint these on the surface in like a very random pattern. So there's also, speaking of like a page, I love looking at like old sticker books because there's, this desire to take sticker and like stick it somewhere on a page, but it always ends up being random. Uh, and there's something really beautiful in that randomness.
Yeah, I mean, growing up also in the 90s, I can really relate to getting those nice fresh pages of stickers, and just like slapping them on everything that I own.
Yeah.
And this piece is, in a lot of your work, is really nostalgic to me in that way, even though probably my choice of stickers when I was a kid is different.
Yeah. And then the other marks in that work is all done with airbrush, the kind of like flower haze.
Yeah, I think that there is, when people look at your work and when I look at your work, there's something so fun about it and colorful and poppy. Um, but your printmaking background is really evident when you get into how you're applying all these marks, how
Mhm.
sort of oriented you are, and how thoughtful you need
Mhm.
to be able to make these marks in such a random way. Like you have to go through so much labor to just get, this shape to this
Yeah.
level. Um,
Yeah.
so when you say you're making stencils too, you're making stencils.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I lost it a little bit.
Yeah, when you're making the stencils, how are you making the stencils?
Um, I probably make things overly complicated. That's just kind of my nature. But I scan in a stencil, I bring it into Illustrator, I break it down into its basic colors, color separation, and then I cut vinyl stencils for each of those colors, and then I paint them one by one on top of each other on the painting. So like the cherries will start with like the white background, and then it'll get the red shape, and then it'll get the green shape on top.
So there's just 3 different stencils to get this
Yes.
one.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all different scales. So you're making quite a few stencils for every single.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of stencils.
It's not. And, you know, it was surprising to me to hear even, you know, this piece on the right that we were talking about earlier. It's not like you're laying these blocks of color directly over these screen printed art history pages. You've actually separated the images so that these different sort of forms just perfectly butt up against each other, but they're not actually overlaid.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe I just get too excited about making a mark and I'll just like instantly make it, but then everything else in the background needs to happen. So then I have to like work backwards, and I have to mask out certain areas and like protect them as I work on the rest.
We've got a question here from Dom. Can you just, are the stickers hand painted or airbrushed?
The stickers are for the most part, they're all hand painted.
So like
There are some colors that get airbrushed, like that one. I think the yellow is airbrushed on top of the white, but everything else is hand painted.
So you've applied each one of these daisies with a different stencil.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of work.
Yeah. So each daisy gets painted individually onto the chain.
Nice. And I mean, really, your approach to everything begins here as a printmaker.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just walk through a few different examples. I think I'd like to start with this sort of series, because I think it's fascinating how you got this text and the color. Could you talk about that?
Yes. So those are drawings. Those don't have any like print technique in them, but those are the text is coming from it's not an index page, but like an appendix from an art history book talking about 2 statues of Aphrodite. And my dogs are barking, sorry. And so the text about the 2 statues of Aphrodite I was really drawn to because it's like a visual analysis of the statue itself, but it becomes a visual analysis of a woman's body. So there are fragments of text visible that discuss certain body parts in a lot of detail. And those are plotter drawn. So I use a plotter. I kind of like made an attachment so I could put a mechanical pencil in there. So that's why they're so perfectly drawn, the text that is. And then on top of that, I've overlaid those same sticker shapes from the previous painting and hand painted those.
So when you say a plotter, what do you mean?
It's like a little robot. It's a robot that holds either a cutting tool or a pen tool, or I put in my pencil, and it draws according to a computer design. So there's a lot of hand meets computer or hand meets digital in these works.
Nice, and that sort of brings me right to here. So all these gray sort of looking hand-drawn pieces that are covered throughout this how those made.
Yeah, so those are monotypes. So I'm going to get a little print nerdy. So those are monotypes, meaning they use a printmaking technique, but only to make one individual image. So they're much more like drawing than printmaking. So you roll out really sticky oil-based ink, you lay down a sheet of paper on top, you draw on the back of the paper, and the pressure of your pen or pencil picks up the sticky ink. So a key aesthetic, a key look of monotypes is that really fuzzy line or fuzzy background from the pressure of the drawing tool. So there's 12 total in the show. They're all busts of Greco-Roman women that I've snagged from art history books. I'm really drawn to when you have a Greco-Roman bust that's been disconnected from its body, so it's just a head. It's like very jarring. And essentially we're studying fragments of artworks as indicative of a larger art era. And then on top of the monotypes are colored pencil text, color pencil drawn text, and those are text stolen from indexes. So there's a lot of numbers, lists, as a way of thinking about cataloging information.
And how are these? How is the text applied? Because it looks.
The colored pencil is also plotter drawn. That's why it looks like really perfect.
Yeah. So you're loading in this information, these designs into a plotter, and then it's produced for you.
Yes.
And then.
Yeah. So I have to make all the design. I have to make all the digital files to then send to the plotter to draw.
Yeah. And how does like this work fit in these smaller pieces that don't have the stickers, but they clearly feel like an extension of your work.
Yeah. They have little bits and pieces. So like that one has text from an art history textbook in it. The other one, the shaped one that you showed, there she is. Those shapes are stick-on earrings. Yeah, and so
those the stick-on earrings, they're the kinds that you like get at Claire's and stuff.
Yeah, on like a white piece of paper, and you just like stick on your ear until it falls off.
Yeah, I love these because people will come in, they'll sort of connect to these immediately, but not know where they're from, and I'll mention that detail. They're like, oh, I knew I recognized that shape, but I didn't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they certainly are taken out of their context. And also the little pieces, and really that whole wall was a nice way to kind of play with simpler ideas that get mixed into the larger paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of like, they're not quite like studies, but it's a way for me to be more playful, experiment, kind of figure out some ideas.
And, like all of your work, I think that, for instance, these monotypes are a really good example of your work coming across as extremely playful, and it is. It's like so fun to look at. You can tell you're having fun while making these, but you're using complex methods to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated work. Like even this piece, could you talk about, what printmaking technique are you using here, and how does it get done?
Yeah. Okay, again, here comes the print nerd. So that's an intaglio print. A lot of the smaller works feature some intaglio. Intaglio is done on traditionally copper plates, and the marks are made onto the surface of the copper with acid. So that is a sugar lift aqua tint. So the dark gray squiggly gesture marks are etched onto the surface of the copper plate and then inked and run through a printing press to pull the impression. Now that one also features some mono printing too, meaning like one of a kind. So that one, the copper plate is inked up, and then I'm using oil sticks for all the colors that you see, using the same gestural mark that was etched into the plate.
That one has a little partner.
Yeah.
in this one. So it's the same plate, and then in the background, you've got here. And is that applied with that same plotter?
Yes. So the green layer is the aqua tint from the previous image, and then the text is plotter drawn, but plotter onto another copper plate. So then the plotter drawing gets etched in acid and then becomes like a part of the copper plate that's inked up and printed.
Nice. And the text is from similar sources?
Yes. The text is from another Greek art history book.
Well, yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job of covering a lot of the main think about. But is there anything that you'd like to add about your process and where some of the imagery comes from, and anything that we didn't get to touch on?
Well, you asked very good questions, Kevin, so we covered a lot. There, a lot of the references are things that I've collected over the years. So that's why I feel like sometimes the work is very generative in that, like, I find something, I like it, and I come back to it a few years later.
Right.
So, for instance, like, I've used some of those same busts in previous works. I have certain pages from art history books that I really value because of like what the text says or what the image is, and I'll come back to it again and again. And that also goes for the more contemporary artifacts too, like that Best of Sonny and Cher album. I've made like 3 or 4 paintings with tiny references to that album cover
This one?
because they're just things that I really love and I'm really drawn to and I'm really interested in, and it's kind of that like instinctual hook of something visual that really like gets me excited in the studio.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of printmakers in general, is being able to use source material multiple times over, and it, just sort of evolves over time.
Yeah.
And for those of you watching that didn't see the first exhibition of Rachel's work, an example of that is this little piece in the corner. We had, a 13-foot tall vinyl mural in the gallery in the back of the work featuring this image here.
Yeah.
Really fascinating to see it at such a small scale now, but like that little hook from last show.
Yeah, that's a great example. I wasn't even thinking about that when I started talking. Yes, she was from the last show. Yeah, it's the cover of a book called The Greeks. So there's usually like things that I find kind of funny or amusing about some of the artifacts. Like that's a small paperback book and the title is just The Greeks, as if we're going to learn everything about the Greeks in this one, paperback book.
80 pages is all you need to get.
Yeah.
Rachel, I really appreciate your time this morning. The show's beautiful. It's so varied. There's so much that goes into this work. Together. So much work. And I've heard multiple people come in and, realize that, this piece here, which from a distance and through a camera can look so simple, but you get up to it and you start to see all the work that's put into this and precision that you need to be able to make something like this. It's been nice to watch people discover that in real time. So thank you all for watching. Rachel, thank you for your time. The show is called Read Somewhere, and it's up until May 27th. So you guys all have the month of May to get down here. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah.